Right, so I'm going to hand it over to Cornelius. Stephen, welcome to MiCHAMP. Thank you for being here, Cornelius.
All right. Thank you, Brahmaji. Stephen, we're a small but very, very mighty and engaged group. Um, and Really excited to have you here. I just wanted to provide a brief introduction so that everyone can kind of know about some of the exciting work that I've kind of long known about. We have with us today Stephen Lin, who's a practicing family physician, chief of general primary care at Stanford University School of Medicine, and also president of the Society of Teachers of Family Medicine. Dr. Lin is the founding director for the Stanford Healthcare AI Applied Research Team, a primary care focused AI implementation center that's partnered with 50 organizations across industry, academia, nonprofit organizations, the government, to basically bring leading edge AI technologies from quote code to bedside. And this is in support of the quintuple aim. Dr. Lin was a James C. Puffer American Board of Family Medicine Fellow with the National Academy of Medicine. And he's the author of over 500 scholarly works and conference presentations. And I believe I met Stephen for the first time when he kindly introduced himself when we were both fellows at the within programs at the National Academy of Medicine. And we that since led to a few collaborations, whether it was speaking or co-authoring a paper. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about more about what Stephen has been doing to bridge that gap between development of innovative AI systems or models and to bridge that gap between the development and the actual implementation of safe and effective models into clinical practice to improve patient outcomes and support frontline clinicians in their work. And Stephen, I just wanted to briefly let you know that this is we really enjoy talking about the exciting work that folks are doing. So, intermittently folks may raise their hand or put things in the chat, and I'll bring those to your attention so that we can respond to those. But we'll also leave about 10 to 15 minutes toward the end for some more formal Q&A, with our hope of ending, or with our plan to end at about 3 p.m. today. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lin. And again, we appreciate everyone being here today.
Thanks, Cornelius. Really appreciate it. My hope is to not spend too much time talking. I'm really glad that Cornelius invited me to share a little bit about my team at Stanford and some of the work that we're doing. My hope is that I'll just spend a couple minutes on this and then really open it up for discussion because I'd love to hear what all of you folks are thinking about what you're doing. And sometimes it's great to just have the space and time to talk about the nuances of sort of how things work and don't work at the different institutions to share learnings, and that's what I'm here for. I'm hoping I could add a little bit of value in terms of sharing what we're doing, but mostly I want to learn from you all as well. And I appreciate the opportunity, Cornelius. I think we met a couple years ago through NAM, as you were saying, and it's been great working with you. And congratulations on your recent accomplishments. Really appreciate that. So I have a couple of different hats at Stanford. One is really in the leadership of this applied AI research team, which I would characterize most as a implementation science focused AI team. I started this team about 6 years ago. I was really worried that as AI was starting to come into the forefront of our clinical care, education, and research missions, that if primary care wasn't at the table, we would be on the table. And so I was very interested in developing infrastructure around a team that can help us be very much a part of the conversation when it comes to the broad scale implementation of AI at Stanford. What I saw in my landscape analysis from my vantage point as an operations leader, Cornelius mentioned I'm the section chief for general primary care. So that's kind of like the service line leader for general internal medicine and family medicine. We don't have a department of family medicine at Stanford. And so I oversee both the general internists as well as the family docs. I was very interested in what was already happening at Stanford. And what I saw was a whole bunch of different shops that did a lot of cool things, but mostly in the basic science and model development area. and really not so much in the implementation area. And so, in order to fill that gap, I put together a team that I thought would be best suited to do that, while being able to deliver a generalist, primary care centric perspective to an institution that I think would really benefit from that foundation. And so this is my core team. I love these folks. I work daily with them. And the team is constructed, I think, strategically with the idea of implementation in mind. We do not generally, on rare occasions we do, but in general, we don't build our own models. We work with people who are developing models, whether they be within our own shop at Stanford or at other academic institutions or in industry. What we do is we partner with the teams that are building those models, and we provide that bridge from what we say code to bedside. And in order to make that happen, the team is constructed specifically with that in mind. Like, what are the skill sets that we need in order to actually make that happen? So, represented on the faculty side, we have folks that are in mid to senior level leadership in clinical operations administration. We have folks in mid to senior leadership in quality improvement and really much embedded in a quality improvement infrastructure that's at Stanford. Folks that are in mid to senior leadership in clinical informatics, industry collaborations with our industry office. And then all of our staff members are either veteran quality improvement experts who've been doing bread and butter quality improvement work in the inpatient and outpatient setting for years and years, as well as social science trained researchers who are very comfortable with mixed methods evaluations and human factors, and anthropology, sociology background, public health background. So the team is constructed, I would say, very differently than some of our data science heavy teams that are doing AI. And that's by design. We also have a much larger extended team that includes fellows. We usually have 2 or more research fellows. Right now we have a geriatrics research fellow and also a health equity informatics research fellow working with us, as well as a much broader base of about 50 or so affiliate faculty members, other clinical informatics fellows through the Stanford Fellowship Program, and quite a few industry collaborators as well. And what we've tried to do over the last 6 years and have been successful doing is to really integrate ourselves into the institutional governance around AI and digital health. So we work very, very, very closely with our technology and digital solutions department, our CMIO, data science and research technology teams, as well as relevant offices around wellness and also community engagement, because we do have a community engagement portfolio that I'll share a little bit in a later slide. So our mission is to serve humanity by advancing responsible, outcome-driven, and people-centered artificial intelligence through a community of clinicians, scholars, and educators in primary care and population health. And I think the emphasis on primary care and population health is a reflection of where we come from, but really I also am a firm believer that primary care is underrepresented when it comes to conversations at the national level about the use of AI. And we shouldn't be, because we should be at the forefront of the conversation. And our vision is to be a global leader in the practice, implementation, evaluation, and teaching of AI in health and healthcare. The teaching aspects, the educational portfolio, is a relatively recent pivot in our team. We've started out doing almost wholly implementation work, and now we're very much interested in the education work, which I know is something that Cornelius, you and your team and collaborators have done quite a lot of, and I'm eager to learn from. We break down our programs into sort of a couple of different buckets. There's the internal operational stuff that we do with Stanford Healthcare. That includes a faculty affiliates program, as well as a implementation and evaluation program where we help the enterprise with institution-wide implementations. We have an education, again, relatively new work stream where we focus on delivering workshops as well as building capacity for primary care nationally. We have an industry program where we do a lot of sponsored research with industry affiliates. About 1/3 of our portfolio is working directly with technology companies on the industry side. We have a community portfolio where we're engaging with communities, both locally, regionally, as well as nationally, to think about how do we tackle the problem of participatory bias, where a lot of underserved communities do not have the ability to define the problem or engage in the act of the innovation lifecycle. And then we have a policy bucket where we are focusing on things like advocacy, capacity building, and things like planetary health, how AI impacts the environment. That's a space that I think is a very nascent one and something that we're very much interested in exploring.
Stephen, could I interrupt really quickly?
Of
So
course.
I was just curious, going back to that last slide for the education piece, is that predominantly around preparing clinicians and/or learners to, use AI interventions in like clinical practice, or is that also including, actually using AI for teaching and learning purposes, or is it kind of a combination of both of those?
Combination of both of those. I would say a little bit more in the former and a little bit less in the latter right now, just in our current evolution of the team. But we're interested in both. So we do plenty of boot camps, workshops. We've done quite a bit at NABCREG and SDFM, for example, in pre-conference workshop platforms to educate folks on these tools and how they can be used. At Stanford, we are helping our medical students, residents, fellows, and practicing faculty members learn about these tools and get these tools sort of to them in their daily work. But we're also looking at creating precision education systems with artificial intelligence. And so thinking about how do we work with some of our industry partners that are interested in education work to build education tailored large language models that can be AI tutor that could teach our current and present and future workforce on things like not just medical education, but also how to use AI more effectively. So it's a little bit of both, and we're just dipping our toes in this column right now.
Stephen, this is Brahmaji. I wanted to also ask, I mean, this is um, so wonderful to see. And boy, I'm just gonna say it, it looks so organized compared to like what what in Michigan, there's lots of little groups, right? Trying to do very similar, oftentimes overlapping work. And it's been successful, but we've had this constant tension between centralizing things or just allowing different groups to do things. And I'm curious, is this like kind of groups just growing organically and then you kind of created some superstructure around them, or was this deliberately done? Maybe you could tell a little bit about how this program grew from maybe it was just you and a friend at one point, and now it's this.
Yeah, so I will say that what I'm presenting today is sort of my shop, and internally we are organized. But when you zoom out a little bit and look at the entire Stanford ecosystem, I don't think we're all that organized, to be very honest. Um, I imagine similar to Michigan, what we have at Stanford is probably a dozen different AI shops in a dozen different departments and divisions that are very loosely coordinating. But we don't have a very good way of centralizing a lot of our functions. We do have a governance pathway through which enterprise scale deployments go through in order to get approval, funding, and evaluation support. That we do have organized, and actually, I'll share in a minute how we're integrated into that machinery, and it works fairly well. But not everything goes through that enterprise level sort of pipeline. It very much is still fairly siloed. Individual divisions of departments are still doing kind of their own thing. And we have a couple of different forums, like an annual AI conference where we can sort of share internally. There's one in the spring and one in the fall that's open to the public. Uh, but there's a lot more work we need to do at Stanford, at the Stanford level, to organize. I don't think we're that mature in that aspect yet.
Thank you.
So speaking about large-scale AI implementations, my team has been involved in at least four organization-wide implementations in the last 6 years. These are around advanced care planning, clinical deterioration, so predicting ICU escalations codes, RRTs, uh, deploying a GPT-powered draft reply system for our in-basket messages, and then Dex Copilot, I don't think requires any introduction. Lots of institutions are doing ambient AI documentation technology. In each of these cases, primary care has been at the forefront in both helping with the initial piloting as well as evaluating the implementation itself. And we are very lucky that we have a strong partnership with our IT folks and our CMIO office. We basically were the first ones to say, as a division, we have organized ourselves and we are ready to be the guinea pigs, if you will, for this technology. In return, we'd like to be part of the implementation governance mechanism and we'll help you evaluate it. And that relationship has worked out really well. So we have been a key part of these enterprise level deployments and have published our learnings in various journals around this. There are some additional deployments that we're working on right now, one around pharmacogenomics and also one around AI-assisted chart reviews that hopefully we'll be able to launch org-wide in the next year or two. On the industry front, this is kind of where we started. Our first collaboration was with Google around Care Studio and their Google sort of internal version of an AI ambient scribe. But since then, we've learned how to work a little bit better with industry. We are very much partnered with our industry office and have had a very good relationship with both very small startup companies to large technology companies. Sometimes we have master research agreements that we put together with companies. Other engagements are much smaller, quick, rapid cycle, sort of a consulting-based type agreement. We are standing up an industry affiliates program with different tiers where industry can choose what level of engagement they want. And if they want to do long-term sponsored research projects with us, there's a pathway for that. So some examples have been, for example, working in the derm space on deep learning models to help primary care doctors use a AI tool to diagnose and do virtual biopsies of derm lesions. We've worked with large language models that can help with message classification, that can route messages to the right buckets and then draft replies for them. And then we've also worked with industry on, and I'll mention our policy work a little bit, on trying to push them to create some more diverse and representative data sets, especially the ones that are more useful for primary care, that we're hoping to make open access and available for others who want to work with industry. On the community,
can I quickly interrupt again? I'm sorry.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious. So, you showed a number of great use cases there on the slide prior to this one here. The
Prior,
one before that, yeah, the one
okay.
before this one. Yeah, so I mean, many of us, I'm sure, are familiar with these particular use cases. I was just curious about like if you could just kind of provide just like a brief like example of like what it looks like going from sort of maybe not necessarily like bedside to implementation, but perhaps identifying a model as one that Stanford would like to implement into their institution, and then actually doing so, and then in that evaluation process. Just curious about like what that looks like at Stanford?
Yeah,
Just kind of like a
yeah,
brief overview for one of these use cases, because I could imagine that it would be a bit different for each one. But is there one
exactly.
where you could just kind of describe like what generally this would potentially look like for your team?
Yeah, it really is very different for each case. And maybe I'll highlight two briefly and show you how different they could be. So for the advanced care planning one, this was a homegrown model. Our biomedical informatics and research group developed a mortality prediction tool that takes data from the EHR and predict the risk of dying in the next 12 months, 9 months, 6 months, 3 months. But they didn't know what to do with that tool. So they kind of created it and then it kind of like did nothing for about a year or two. And then they reached out to us. And operationally, through sort of our connections, we connected them with palliative care, inpatient social work, case management. And we decided that this tool could be a way to prioritize having serious illness and advanced care planning conversations on those people who are admitted to the inpatient hospital medicine and oncology service, for example. And so then it took another about a year and a half for us to integrate the model into our Epic system. And then we did needs assessments, talk to folks, determine who the primary end users will be, and then what about the key relationships and individuals with primary end users. Initially, we thought, hey, physicians could be using this. We quickly realized through some of our qualitative work that actually the initial end user probably shouldn't be the physician. It should be another team member. And it turned out that the most effective one was actually nursing and PT. Like if they got the alert in the EHR, they were the most activated and engaged and able to actually trigger the downstream workflows that would lead to a advanced care planning discussion. And so we did a lot of pre-work. Then the actual implementation itself was relatively smooth, and we did the implementation along with an evaluation. That one, from end to end, probably took about, I would say, 3 years or so. But it's one of the first ones that went live, and it's one of the only ones that hasn't been decommissioned from the first batch of models that we implemented. So it's actually working really well. I think the learning there is that um, building the collaborative team workflows around the model is so important that if you get it right and put in the work to get that right, even before model deployment, you're going to have a much higher chance of success. So that one we published in the New England Journal, and I'm happy to send the link. You can see the screenshot down there. So that one took a very long time. In contrast, the fastest one that we were able to go live was probably the My Health draft replies one. So this is a Epic already integrated Epic tool that drafted replies to patient My Health messages that for doctors to review and then send back. This one, because it was an out of the box tool, there was a high degree of alignment on why this was helpful for burnout and operations. There were very willing partners to be the pilot users. We had a good plan, we had some experience. End to end, from making the decision to do this, to turning on the technology, to evaluating, to actually the paper coming out in JAMA was 12 months. That was fast. And that's just a very, very different set of circumstances.
So that's no longer in pilot phase. That's actually
Yeah,
fully implemented and it's okay.
yeah, yeah.
Great. Remind you, I thought I saw you come off mute. Did you have a question?
Yeah, no, it's great. And it actually kind of dovetails a little bit on this. It's just an interesting observation for me that like if I were to put together a slide from like what Michigan's been doing, those last three boxes would be the same, right? I mean, we have a clinical deterioration model, we have a pilot program on the draft replies, and then we're also trying to figure out ways in which to evaluate the DAX Copilot. So it's just fascinating to me. But in your next slide, to build off what you just said, it just is striking to me that because we get inundated by these models, and each one, the thing that jumped out at me was you said it took 18 months to get that advanced care planning into your system. And that seems like that's a huge bottleneck for us as well, because you're working with IT shops that, our HITS program is like amazing, but they've got a hospital to run. And when you are talking about pilots, it's hard to get them to, pay attention to this. And I don't know, do you have like a shop within your IT group that you work with that can get it within like, whatever ClinDoc or, whatever interface that you want to even pilot test this and to run little experiments, or is that a bottleneck for you guys as well?
Absolutely a bottleneck for us as well. It took us about 5, 6 years to build a strong enough working relationship with our IT colleagues that we now have sort of a well-defined prioritization process and a sort of a little group within technology and digital solutions where we can do more rapid cycle evaluations. And so um, we are the evaluators, and our partners on the TDS side provide the resources to do so. And this is directly under the CMIO office. And so at the institutional level, there is still very much a bottleneck in terms of prioritization for IT resources. Um, at Stanford, there is a small but quite effective group of folks that includes us and a portion of the CMIO leadership that is tasked with doing rapid cycle evaluations of technology partners. The business case that we've made in order for this to work is that unless we're allowed to do these rapid evaluations, we are not able to make sound operational decisions around which products we are willing to deploy and dedicate resources to deploying. And so, thankfully, it took a long time, but we were able to make that case.
Yeah, that's very helpful. If you could run like an ideal situation, would you actually invest in building out like more resources into this type of group, like that you said, that partnering group, or what? I mean, it's just everybody I know that, we all kind of like hold on to one or two success stories because and part of it's to do this at scale. Like ultimately, we're thinking about hundreds of models, right? I mean, there's hundreds of companies, and yet, it's hard. And, you got Epic up on here too, which is a little bit of a bottleneck in and of itself because that's the environment that we all have to make this work.
Yeah. I
Yeah, I
absolutely
was gonna
would
ask.
advocate for institutional resourcing for a nimble group that can do rapid evaluation, sort of in the spirit of quality improvement, with the North Star of helping to make operationally important decisions around technology deployments. I feel like every institution does this a little bit differently. With AI, it's just so important that that gets done before choosing and deploying a model and spending all the resources to dedicate to it. So it took us a while to sort of create the relationships to allow for that to happen. But today, thankfully, we have a group that can do that.
Aaron, you were going to ask something?
Yeah, along those lines, I mean, I wondered, Stephen, how you guys prioritized. If there's, if you meet with your group and there's 10 to 12 models that are all, aimed at either an expense that the health system is paying that could be lowered, or patient satisfaction, or a kind of a chronic disease that's in primary care that's, maybe high priority. How do you guys prioritize which models to test and validate and try and implement?
Yeah. There are two tools that we kind of use. They're calculators that we've developed to evaluate tech companies. One is more geared towards the evaluating the company itself, the technology, and its alignment with the institutional priorities. It
Yeah.
takes into account things that are a little bit difficult to measure but are really important, like uh, how easy it is to work with them, the strength of our relationship, the strength of their funding,
Yeah.
and then the alignment with multiple areas of let's say, the quintuple aim as a guiding framework. The other one is very business oriented. That calculator takes a look at our C-suite level operating plan and looks at whether or not the solution hits one or multiple domains along that operating plan, and does some back of the envelope calculations on return on an investment. And so we try to merge the business case from a financial standpoint as well as sort of a alignment standpoint. And then that goes to a executive committee that is well represented in terms of partners on the technology side, but also operational leaders. And then they make the final decision about prioritization.
Got it. Thank you. That's awesome.
And Steve, once that decision is made regarding the decision to work with a company and or implement a model that they're proposing, is there some sort of like internal bid of some kind that happens amongst like groups or like researchers? And I mean, for example, I mean, it sounds like you all are doing like wonderful things in like the primary care space, but I would imagine that there are other departments and or divisions that are perhaps interested in maybe piloting and or testing things in their space versus the primary care space. So is there some sort of like process that you all use to determine who's going to actually do the testing and validating and so on?
Right now, that process is very mature for primary care, mostly because of the relationships that we've built and the integration of my team with the central team. I don't think that is as strong with some of the other departments and specialties. We still need to build that process out. Today, for lack of a better word, it's kind of like, who do you know? Who do you know is working on this? Which shops exist? And what does the technology look like? Like if it's a cardiology focused one, that is really for cardiology, not for primary care. We know who in cardiology is doing it, and then we'll reach out. That part is sort of the sustainability conversation that we have after we make decisions about implementation. Sometimes it takes doing the implementation itself for us to really identify where it fits nicely and who's going to carry on that work afterwards. So we don't always have the right people identified right at the beginning. So far, I think the best integrated is us in primary care.
Thank you.
Thanks for these questions. I enjoy them quite a bit, and I'm glad that this is the way that this is turning out rather than just me talking. Community. So we're in primary care. We care a lot about this, and what we have tried to do, which is also unique compared to some of the other AI shops, is we try to look at our underserved communities in the Bay Area. And yes, we do have quite underserved communities in the Bay Area, even though the Bay Area is generally known as fairly affluent. There are pockets of deep disparity, and we have partnered with community health centers, as well as community health plans and our county health systems, to think about how we can work better with them. One example of a project that we did was a sort of a tripartite collaboration between us, the Santa Clara Family Health Plan, and the Santa Clara County, as well as Google, on doing a series of health fairs where community members are able to come, get sort of what's usually done at a typical health fair, like sign up for Medi-Cal, get blood pressure tests, or check glucose and stuff like that. But there were also booths with technologies that we've developed in partnership with Google, where they can weigh in. They can try them out, they can weigh in, and they can say what works and what doesn't. That was a really interesting collaboration, and it was really helpful for us to get that feedback directly from community members in a very diverse way, in a way that we can't get from just our own Stanford patients. And it was really helpful for Google as a partner to get really good, honest feedback about where their technology falls short. And in some instances, we've been able to convince them to make better design choices that were more accessible to folks with different language needs, literacy levels, accessibility levels, and so on and so forth. So we are hoping to do more with this work. And if you're doing anything in the community space, I would love to learn what you're doing and how you're doing it. In the education space, thanks to Cornelius's question, I think I touched a little bit on this, but we do have a boot camp series that we've taken on a roadshow nationally at NADPRAG, STFN, and other conferences. We're doing one again in a couple of weeks in Salt Lake City. Those have been very well attended. It's sort of a level setting and upskilling boot camp for educators, frontline physicians, as well as researchers to get to know how to use generative AI in their daily work, whether it's teaching learners or seeing patients or doing research activities. There is something called the Enable Capacity Learning Collaborative, which is essentially a primary care artificial intelligence research collaborative between Stanford, University of Pittsburgh, University of Houston, UC San Diego, and UT San Antonio, that was funded by an American Board of Family Foundation grant. This is a multi-year project where every quarter we come together, the folks that are doing the research share learnings, we invite speakers to this, and the goal is for us to help each other build capacity within our own shops to do more AI-based research and education efforts. And the ultimate goal is to expand this collaborative to include more institutions and then to publish on some of those learnings in the form of like a playbook that other institutions can use to build their own internal capacity for AI research and education. Cornelius mentioned that I'm the president-elect for STFM. STFM has convened a 2-year AI in medical education task force that will help think about how we can use AI to better educate our future and present workforce. There's a lot of different deliverables in this task force. I'll just share one important one that we're very interested in, which is this idea of defining the building blocks of an AI center of excellence in primary care. What does it mean to be an AI center of excellence? How are current centers of excellence built, structured, financed? What's the governance process? We want to find out what makes it work and see if we can disseminate that knowledge broadly across institutions. And then the ultimate point is to raise the profile of family medicine and primary care and say, we're doing pretty cool stuff in AI, and we would love for medical students to choose family medicine because we're doing really cool stuff in AI. And related to that, we are internally building something called the Stanford Primary Care AI Academy. This is our efforts to educate our entire primary care workforce, from medical assistants to staff to faculty members, on how to use AI effectively, whether it's in their patient care, research, or educational activities. We're thinking about launching this in late 2025, 2026, and over the next 2-3 years, our goal is to train 100% of our workforce through this AI Academy. And then from a policy standpoint, during my time with the National Academies of Medicine, I had the opportunity to participate in a couple of different projects. One was around the consensus study report that was produced by the NAM around how to inject equity into the innovation lifecycle and where equity fails and where we have levers to advance equity within the innovation lifecycle. Another one was around this idea of a universal AI code of conduct. A problem statement here being that there is actually an epidemic of codes of conduct around AI, and how do you unify some of those codes into something that could be actionable and deployed, whether you're in academia or you're in industry or you're in government. And we've also written recently in a JAMA Internal Medicine Viewpoint paper about how this code of conduct, some of the implications around sort of continuous monitoring for the safety of AI tools, how do you ensure inclusive participation from underserved communities and those without the voice to participate. And then sustainability, really around AI and planetary health. I think there's a growing awareness that AI is a big polluter. And, deploying My Health draft message replies at the institutional level to help doctors reply to messages faster seems like a good thing to do. But when that means that for every week of use, we are cutting down a forest, is that worth it? And what are the CO2 emission implications of using AI? And how do we better understand this? And then maybe one day incorporate planetary health concerns and climate change impact into comprehensive evaluations of AI tools themselves.
Stephen, with that said, does your group play a role or any role in the continued like monitoring of models once they've been deployed, or is that a different
That's a
um
different group. Thanks for
okay.
asking. That's a different group. And there is a process for that within Stanford that is carried out by the data science team. They do the continued monitoring. They look for drift, and they do continued audits of fairness and bias with the models. One thing they're now doing is evaluating the environmental impact, and we're working with them to better understand how to even do that. So we're working on a paper right now that will calculate the environmental impact of all of the tools that we're using at Stanford, and then just surface that as a anchor for conversation. Is it worth it? And yeah, it's been a great 6 years. I love my team. We've been productive and I think largely successful in demonstrating the value of primary care in being a leader in AI implementation, at least at Stanford. And with that, I'd love to learn what you all are doing and how we might be able to collaborate moving forward.
Thank you so much for this awesome presentation, Stephen. I'd say as a primary care physician, I'm like super excited to see you, putting primary care physicians who we know are, all of us are, burdened with lots of things to do, but we know that burnout in primary care is pretty significant around portal practice and pajama time and so on. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. We wanted to open things up for questions now, and I was hoping to kind of get started if it's okay. The first one is related to, you've done like lots of amazing work. And I could imagine that it takes a lot of resources, material and intellectual resources to do a lot of the amazing things that you've done. And in the environment that we're currently in when it comes to grant funding and NIH and so on, I'm just kind of curious about, what the support for many of the great things that you've done look like on a day-to-day basis. I mean, not like lots of it doesn't have to go into a lot of detail, but just curious about institutional support and or external and industry support, just kind of what that looks like when it comes to funding some of the great work that you've done.
Yeah. So the way that we're funded is in sort of three sort of equally sized buckets. 1/3 of our funding is through industry. So these are industry sponsored research programs as well as our industry affiliates program that I mentioned before. About 1/3 is directly from the health system itself. We serve as the implementation and evaluation engine for Stanford Healthcare to make operational decisions about these tools, and they pay us for it. And so that internal money is hardwired to hospital funding sources, not school of medicine, hospital funding sources. That's important. And then the last third is through more traditional grants, foundation support. And because it only is about 1/3 of our funding, we're lucky to have a relatively diversified portfolio that helps us weather through crazy times like this.
Thanks, Stephen, for a great talk. I had a couple of questions for you. One is the the question of like, do you guys have it's not just even the tools and even the IT piece, but then sometimes it's like having engaged providers and clinicians who are willing to kind of test these tools out. Do you guys have like I don't know, like an innovation unit? One of the struggles that we have often is that you either turn something on 0 people or like 1,200 beds. And
Yeah.
it's not a that's not an easy decision to make. It brings a lot of angst. And so do you guys have like a nimble unit that you keep going back to and saying like, maybe a group of providers or clinicians who are used to kind of working in this space and actually enjoy it rather than kind of like fight you tooth and nail? And then,
Yeah.
oh, go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The answer is yes, we do, and we're relatively lucky in the sense that our providers are uh, fairly on the spectrum of early adoption. They're fairly engaged at baseline.
Hmm.
Rarely do you have heavy resistance, and so sort of at baseline, our faculty group, which is around 300 faculty members, not counting the affiliates. They're very engaged at baseline. So we're very lucky in that aspect. And yes, we have a uh, beta testing group essentially. And so those are sort of our affiliate faculty members that are within the heart shop, the 50 or so that I mentioned. They're
Mm,
the ones that have signed up to be the guinea pigs, and they'll try things out first, give us really good early level feedback that we can take back to our TDS colleagues and say, we got to fix these before a wider deployment. We've also have experimented with, and this is really not easy to do, but we do have the process of doing this, is we can turn it on in a way that allows us to do some interesting experiments. We can turn it on in this many of our clinics, but not these clinics. And then we can do sort of a quick study on what happens if we do that, and then do a crossover, for example. And so we don't do that often, but in cases where that type of design would be useful, we can do that as well.
So most of your evaluations are just like they're pre-post. They're not really where there is a control group, but it's you might turn it on in certain people, or I'm just curious how.
It depends on the purpose of the evaluation. If the purpose of our evaluation is to do something really quick to inform an operational decision about partnering with a technology vendor, we do it pretty quickly. And so the design is relatively simple. We
Got it.
do have some uh, longer evaluations that, like the first one we turned on around ACP, we've been doing for a long time, and we're still doing
Mm,
longitudinal evaluations around it. And those designs are more rigorous.
got it.
Yeah.
Last question, it looks like Larry wants to ask something too, is, so you're a primary care physician at the interface of AI and health, and I don't know how it is at Stanford, but there's like an urgency in terms of wait lists and accessibility to primary care at
Mhm.
Michigan. And how have you leveraged some of these AI tools to solve that operational need of like greater primary care resources, or has that been something secondary, or do you guys have that pressure? I mean, it
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, we have that pressure. I don't think any of our current AI tools really solves that problem. Um, we are we are looking into developing sort of population level situational awareness by leveraging tools that can take a look at all of the patients that we serve, including those that are not impaneled to our primary care doctors, those that are ending up in our ERs and ending up in our hospitals, but they're impaneled somewhere else in the community, for example. We're trying to develop tools that gives us that large, high-level situational awareness so that we can figure out how to decompress our hospitals, where people need to go after discharge, which patients we need to prioritize for empanelment in our very scarce faculty panels versus can they be taken care of by one of our community affiliates based on things like complexity or need. And it's it's tough. It's a really tough issue. We don't have a good system for triaging patients at that level. Right now, it's kind of like first come, first serve. In our panels, as soon as I hire someone, their panels are full within a couple of months, and I'm running out of space to hire, and that's just a really difficult problem. So um, I'm glad we're not the only ones with that problem. But I don't know if that's a problem that we can reasonably expect technology to solve, right? I think it's a much more complex problem that really requires big moves at the policy level and around support for primary care in general.
So, this is Larry McMahon. I was division chief at General Medicine here, so I feel your pain. Um, great talk. What I was just going to ask is a lot of the clinically focused AI implementation right now is like a semi-autonomous vehicle, right? It gets you partway on good highways, um, but when things get tough, it just tells you to look again at what's going on. So it's kind of a fancy schmancy alarm. Um, and the problem is that we know that alarms are not without problems. And the more alarms you have, the more problems they create. National Academy of Medicine actually put out a paper on the danger of alarms and the fact that in hospitals they are maybe not worth what they try to do and cause all kinds of issues. We wrote a paper a couple years ago called Alarmed and Dangerous. So I'm concerned that with the ability to create sort of pseudo clinical interventions in AI, we're just creating this whole new wave of alarms that we don't understand how they integrate with the other sort of information flows that already exist. And I think that's one of the real conundrums we have to face is how do the AI systems interface with existing systems and information flows, and are they sort of tripping over each other? And anyone with a good data set and some models can create an AI model. I mean, it's not like creating a cardiac monitor, right? So it has a lower threshold, which means there'll be more of them, and there'll be less time to figure out how they integrate.
Such a great comment. I completely agree, and I would say it's a great elevator pitch for the need for implementation science in AI, not just making models and putting them forward, but figuring out how they actually are implemented and the downstream unintended consequences of them. And I would say, too, the involvement of primary care physicians who understand systems and can look at the consequences of technologies deployed at the system level in a holistic way.
I don't disagree. The problem is that someone with an AI system has $1 billion on the line, and we have some concerns, and billions tend to outweigh concerns most days. Just saying.
Stephen,
Yeah.
do you all do any work in with de-implementation? So if a model is, not performing the way that it was prior to or when it was initially implemented or deployed, do you all do any work related to de-implementation? I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, this may not have necessarily been de-implemented, but, changes around like the epic sepsis model and things along those lines. Do you all do
Yeah.
any work related to that?
We do. We do. Not us primarily, but there's a separate team. So the same team that is responsible for maintenance is responsible for de-implementation because they're the ones that are doing the monitoring. And we've de-implemented many models, more models than are currently still active. So in the first batch of models that we sort of put out, the advanced care planning one was one of the first batches. That one is the only one out of that generation that has survived. Everything else has been de-implemented. A lot of the ones that have been de-implemented are out of the box epic models around risk stratification, readmissions, length of stay. They just didn't work for us. We found that the model predictions were either just totally off base or not operationally useful.
Excellent. I'm gonna ask if we have any other questions and or comments for Stephen while we have him here. Okay, I think Aaron just came back on screen. Okay.
Not with any brilliant question. Stephen, I'll actually follow up with you offline. I'm teaching like a boot camp on AI and data reproducibility, and UT San Antonio is one of the, and Emory and Jackson State. And we realized we put this great curriculum together to like teach AI methods and data reproducibility at, one's a historic Black college and university, one, and then we realized we should probably teach it at Michigan because I don't think we have enough, it's just all moving so quickly. I don't think we all have, the latest. That's why I love your whole focus on like education, getting fellows to help do the work. That's where we often get the best ideas. So I might follow up with you offline.
Yeah, please do. Cornelius has my email, and I'm happy
Okay,
to
great.
share and have any follow-up conversations with anybody who's interested.
Great.
I'd love to learn again more about what you all are doing in Michigan. Cornelius, I know our teams are trying to schedule a site visit. That would be great to share learnings there too as well.
Come before November.
So, Aaron, this is actually a team and myself and a few others from Michigan going out to Stanford. But to bring Stephen here, that would be great as well. So will have to like look into that and see whether or not we can do that at some point too. Brahmaji, you were unmuted. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say before
I
we
thought I
end?
was going to say go after November to you, Cornelius, but Stephen, thank you for coming. I mean, I think in terms of our shared learnings, it's really great to see what you guys are doing. Many of the things that you raised are issues that we are still struggling with, and um, it's fun to see these kind of different communities trying to develop these tools in different ways. So yeah, so we thank you again. So thanks, Cornelius, for arranging it too.
My
Thank you for the
pleasure.
invitation.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm gonna send an email connecting Stephen and Aaron as soon as we hang up. But Stephen, really appreciate you being here. Really appreciate everyone else coming, and we hope you have a great weekend. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.